Welcome to another exhilarating episode of Comic Book Straight Talk, brought to you from the secret basement inside one of America's oldest comic shops, Tulsa's own The Comic Empire. Now, true believers, open up your ear holes and get ready to have your head filled with the best comic book knowledge this galaxy can handle. That's right, it's time for another nerd overload with Comic Book Straight Talk.
Welcome back to Comic Book Straight Talk. I'm Terry the French Tickler French.
Dalian.
Captain Dalian.
Captain Dalian.
Just Kenny.
And we have our guests.
Alan the Unicorn Wilkinson.
And?
Raquel.
And?
Just Carrington.
Just Carrington. And today we're going to talk about fashion in comic books. Last week was
Fashion Week in New York.
And our guests, Alan and Raquel, came up with five different, some ideas, like five top ideas of the best fashion.
How did it come about?
Oh, yeah.
So me and Raquel were at a pizza place, and we were talking about Supergirl's boots.
And let's be clear on this. We were there with other people, but it was just him and I talking about
Supergirl's boots.
Supergirl's boots.
I think Kenny and we had James there. I think they kicked in as well.
Eventually, but it was mostly our conversation for sure. But then we decided that it would be kind of interesting to do a show about the fashion and comic books, the top 5 males, top 5 females, and some team looks that that I like and some that Raquel likes, and comparing and just seeing the differences between what everybody's fashion viewpoint is.
Do you think fashion is really even important in comic books?
Sometimes it's a very visual medium. You have to have some kind of attraction. It's just like saying, if you're not invested in a character in a show, you're not going to continue to watch the show. There has to be some kind of striking semblance to it to be able to kind of carry, I think, a comic book. And it's kind of what symbolizes a superhero. Not always, but in everybody's kind of mainstream mind, or most people's mainstream mind, there's a costume involved in some of those characters.
Wasn't it Tim Gunn that put on the Iron Man costume to save Tony Stark in a...
Yes, in Millie the Model.
Yes.
Or I think the book they called it Models Inc. It was
Models
like
Inc., right. Tim Gunn from Project Runway fame.
Yeah.
So see, so yes, Terry, there is a fashion...
No, and I agree. I was just asking, the whole reason I picked up the first appearance of Deadpool was because I was like, wow, that's a very cool suit.
Yeah, and I think that in general, even if it's not fashion in the sense of sort of what you might think of as fashion in the sort of civilian world, you might say, is that superheroes, as Al mentioned, are a very visual medium, and they've been, since the beginning, constantly changing their costumes, and these things go in a sort of, a cycle or an up and down kind of thing, in the way that clothing fashion does, the costumes do as well. So I think that that's sort of a way that they're related, and you frequently will have characters that are meant to be sort of young and with it in whatever way, and those characters you would expect to have some sort of fashion sense because the writers say to you that they do.
So explain Jubilee's raincoat then.
It was a 90s thing.
She was on point with the time.
Yeah, but she just never grew out of it, unfortunately.
She did not.
But also a lot of times, even in comic books, fashion or costume changes have denoted different times in her life. Like, one of my top 5 males costumes is Nightwing. He started off as Robin, and then he wouldn't want to be Robin. He wanted his own identity, so he became Nightwing, where he got the big collar, and he got the blue and black, and it became like a coming of age for him. And then slowly over time, he's also become different costumes, kind of denoting different things. Like, he's become more utilitarian, where he's like more, armor and kind of weapons and stuff like that. And so it isn't always just visual. There's also a storytelling element to it, to where you actually become.
Even when he took over Batman, he didn't just step into Bruce's costume. He designed it for himself, right?
He would have been sweaty if he had just stepped into Bruce's costume.
I don't know. I think that.
I'm sure Alfred high pressure cleaning.
Yeah, probably.
Terry, is there a high pressure cleaning system in the Batcave?
There is. Yes.
Okay. You spend time there, so I would know.
So I thought I'll start off with a top. Well, we'll start off with one of my top 5 males, which I thought was. He's kind of hasn't changed a lot, but Dr. Fate I thought was a really good one. Classic blue and yellow, very striking kind of primary-ish colors. Simple. His helmet's kind of changed over time because he was a female at one time. He was, he's been a male. He's been different ethnicities. Or the Earth to current Earth 2 is kind of a different kind of ethnicity, and he's got a different, more Egyptian-looking costume.
In the 90s, he went grunge, and had the little...
he had the eye tattoo,
the eye
kind of
tattoo,
punk rock.
Yeah.
So that was one of the ones that I really liked. That I thought was one of the better fashion people throughout the ages. Was Dr. Fate was one of my top 5. So
I'm gonna go with, for certainly my top male hero in looks is Steve Rogers. Which will not come as a shock to most folks. I really am a big fan of his Cap costume, especially the scale mail, with the little paillettes, the blue paillettes on the top. I think that is just, it's classic. It tells you everything you need to know. He's Captain America.
his Buccaneer boots, those are my favorite.
Well, I'm not as big of a fan of the pirate boots.
So you didn't like his nomad costume?
No.
It was kind of the Nightwing with the big...
You stopped me before I got...
Oh, I'm sorry.
My second part of the Steve Rogers talk is nomad. Because, I mean, come on, that deep V, the cape. He's got that cowl that's got his hair sticking out the top. That I don't know why that was ever in fashion. It only makes sense for a character like Firestorm, whose hair is on fire. That makes sense. No other character does it make sense to have the top of their cowl cut off, but it works in the nomad costume. And then he's got just those big brass buttons holding his cape on. And why does he have a cape? I don't know. That costume, it shouldn't make sense, but it has every bad element, and somehow it comes together, and it's perfect.
Yeah, I hate the buttons.
It. Yeah, I'm not...
And the big belt buckle?
Yeah,
big symbol?
Yeah. Remind me like of disco or something, big belt buckle.
I do like his...
It'd be really cool if he had like a Kiss belt buckle.
His movie one, and then like his even more recent kind of...
Which movie one? He's had quite a few in the movies.
But they don't change them that... I mean, it's not that...
Well, they really kind of did, because in the first one...
In the first one, he had one that was... I mean, it was basically a uniform that had parts of it recolored, and he had the little like suspenders instead of the red stripes. Mm-hmm. My favorite of his movie costumes is the Avengers, which in general people aren't usually a big fan of that one because it looks so comic booky. But that's what I like about it. It was very streamlined. Okay, it was tight. Maybe that's part of it too. It was very fitted. It was a fitted costume, and it just looked nice. Yeah, he kind of looked a little bit dorky, but he's Captain America. That's kind of comes with the territory. So
I like the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier was probably my favorite.
That
was
the stealth
one,
suit,
wasn't it?
the one that's just blue with the symbol. Yeah. That was sort of his, Captain Rogers look that he had in the comics. Although in the comics he had that big red tuxedo stripe down the leg, and I really like that. They did away with that in the movie, but. I kind of understand why. It was a stealth suit. You don't want to have giant red tuxedo stripes on your stealth suit.
Oh, for Captain America really doesn't care.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you're not really aiming at the stripes. You see the guy with the shield coming at you. You're not going to worry about the stripes.
But he was, diving into the ocean, getting on to the whatever kind of ship that was
with a shield.
Well, but the shield had even been repainted with stealth colors, so.
Okay, all right.
Well, the shield was a nice accessory. It has a little spot in the back that it clips to.
Right,
yeah.
so
a little magnetic thing he wore,
He's got, I mean, he's got all
I'm on
kinds of
board.
good accessories.
I'm on
He's
board.
got the red gloves. He's got the red boots.
Accessories.
Yes.
Well, and then there's also...
Man, I'm telling you, accessories will make or break us.
It's fashion accessories, yeah.
The question too that people have: do people like the wings,
or
do they like the
painted
printed
on.
wings?
I like the printed wings.
You don't like the physical wings? I kind of agree.
I mean, the classic is always a classic. It'll always be a classic with the wings sticking out. But the painted ones are definitely a lot more modern and a lot more. I think it goes further than in practicality. I just feel like it is a more practical element than having wings kind of stick out, which kind of actually brings me to my second top 5 was Flash. I like Flash's costume and the red and yellow, and like same thing with them. It's just been small elements changes over the years, and then they have the different Flashes like Jesse Quick and Impulse, and all of them have kind of similar tying costumes, color
Kind of
schemes.
the primary, the
and
blue and red.
Yeah.
Kind of
Jay
they're going-
Garrick's was
yeah.
always a great one. I love Jay Garrick's metal helmet, and they all. But the Flash one was just, it's very streamlined. It's very classic. I'm not a huge fan of the pictures I've seen for the movie one. I feel like it is
Power
if you-
Rangy.
It's just, if you're a runner, you're not going to be wearing all that bulky stuff.
No.
You know, especially if you're a speedster. I feel like it would have been, in my opinion, I think it should have been more streamlined and with stuff like that. That's really going to catch wind. It's not going to be very aerodynamic.
You kind of got a glimpse of the Flash costume in the Suicide Squad movie. The expanded one has a couple scenes with him in it, and you see, and yeah, it doesn't look like
it's more
something-
armorish.
Yeah, it
which
is.
I mean, like, I guess that's the look they're kind of going for everybody.
I mean, the
but
TV show I think nailed it
I think
right.
the TV show
It's-
does better with the kind of leather and
Mhm.
sleek and kind of, you know,
That
better
90s,
silhouette.
the 90s TV show.
90s TV show wasn't. I mean, like, they were on point. They had
Yeah.
it like directly from the comic books.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
and it didn't look bad.
Mm-mm.
But
No.
I feel like the newer one, the new Flash one is a lot, again, more modern, more practical. It feels like the leather would be more protective, but still be streamlined enough to where if you're running, you're not catching wind. So, breaking wind.
I think also sort of the Quicksilver of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that they did a good job with his costume.
Kind of athletic.
Yeah, and I think that would work well for Flash as well. Something that's more athletic, something that you would actually wear while you're running.
Okay, I had to figure out which one you're talking about at first, which Quicksilver, because I was
The
thinking
Avengers Quicksilver
That's,
or the
that's why I
X-Men?
Yeah.
specified of
Okay,
the Marvel
I know,
Cinematic Universe.
I know. Well, I know, but I understand you said that, but then, yes,
Come on,
you're
this
right.
counter.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's gonna come out with counter
Sure,
you
show
down.
your athletic wear.
Yes, you're right.
I am wearing athletic wear today.
The
or
MCU
it's-
Quicksilver was
yeah.
really good. Yes.
All right, so what would be your next one on the top 5?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with, I don't know, because for me it's kind of a bit of a split between two spider characters. Okay, because I really like Scarlet Spider with the hoodie.
Oh, from the '90s one.
Yeah.
I like it. Have you seen the new design? It looks like Spider-Man suit with just a little hood. I don't like it, but I do like
I
the
would have
classic.
been on board with, like, I feel like Spider-Gwen did the hood better.
Yes, no, Spider-Gwen did. I'm not denying that. That is like a near perfect costume.
Just
But I think that I've got a weakness for the jacket over
sleeves.
latex costume, thing, or spandex. I don't know, whatever fake material you're supposed to be wearing. It's so absurd to wear a jacket over that, but I love it. I love the way it looks.
It's a '90s grunge thing.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's just very like, I don't care.
But see, and that's I feel like that's why I would have never went there, just because it is very dated. It's not even like a classic dated. It's just dated.
Well, I think that
I mean, a cut off sweatshirt, like, that's.
I think that at the time,
All I needed was tight rollers jeans.
Yeah, I mean,
oh,
it's like I said with Jubilee.
Yeah.
At the time, you guys
I
said she
know.
was on point.
and I don't
But
think
now?
that's a costume that would work well today. But I think at the time, it was.
It was a
good
very era.
choice.
Yeah.
It was a contemporary choice. Now it would be silly. You would need to redo that a little bit. But I think that for the time that it debuted, it made sense and it looked cool. And I think that it also gave you a sense of the attitude of that character. Just by looking at them, you knew what they were about. And
Kind
then
of like the Rage character from the Avengers in the '80s. He had
Luchador
kind of
mask, the yellow luchador mask.
yeah, and he
with
had
cut-off vest.
and you knew you don't mess with you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other spider character that I like, the male spider character that I really like, was Spider-Man 2099. He had sort
The
of
web.
yeah, he had the webbing, but it wasn't like the classic Spider-Man spider armpit
Yeah.
web. It was almost like a spider web cape kind of, and the little story of how he got it I thought was pretty cute, and it was actually practical. And I the whole aesthetic of that comic was great. I mean, really fantastic. and I thought that his costume was really good.
I really feel a lot of times, though, also it really does depend on the artist, because sometimes you can take a horrible outfit and make a true, really talented artist can make it actually look semi-decent.
Absolutely.
Wonder Woman costume, just really, I mean, not to get off too much off the subject, but Wonder Woman costumes is one of those things where it's like a lot of the armory and kind of weird costumes that she's had. There's been some where I'm like, well, I mean, like, yeah, I can get on board with this, and then you see another artist, and it just doesn't translate well to a different artist, and I think that's why she's had such a hard time finding something other than her classic to kind of span the times. But anyways, carrying on, I like, and this will probably be the only time I'll ever say anything about this character that I like, and that is actually Wolverine. I hate Wolverine. I've never liked him as a character. I think he's overused. But as far as fashion-wise, I feel like his costume, the transitions over the years has been very, have worked well for him. Color schemes are a little weird, but they've always stuck with it. The yellow and kind of bluish color. I've always been personally partial to the brown and tan one. That was probably my favorite one. But like even when he did the new X-Men, where they did the leather jacket, and it was kind of like the old man Logan look, where it had just the hair and the red shirt. And then he had more recently the like full body, like almost like singlet with the claws on it and claw marks. I thought he's kind of, they've done well with his costuming. He even did have the patch where he was like kind of a stealth, and he had like actual eye patch and like a bodysuit that kind of worked for more of the ninja run that he did back in the day. And so I thought his costume has translated well through over the time.
I even liked the X-Force costume he did.
Yeah,
it was black and gray with like the red buckle.
And yeah, I actually later on when we talk about the team ones, I that was one of the ones that their look, that whole look on that whole book was just amazing. The gray variation costumes, I thought was really a touch of genius for them. So
when it comes to Wolverine, I actually am not a huge fan of his classic look. The sort of bright yellow, bright blue, just because I don't think it's a good fit for his character. You know, I think that once they got him in slightly more muted colors, I like the style, because I mean that hair, like, you got to emphasize that crazy hair. So I love the mask, I love the shape of the costume, but the colors I didn't like. I really liked he had like a shirtless with a leather jacket over it look for a while. I think that one was good. That was very sort of on brand for him.
Wolverine's another one that I feel like a lot of times, depending on the artist, it really, I mean, like, they can go a little extreme on those eye wings.
Yeah.
Some people can make them really little, other people huge, you know.
And just look
you can't walk through the
ridiculous,
door.
and some make them really tiny, and they look kind of like just puny.
One of the things that gets me about Wolverine is he's supposed to be short and very hairy. And you'll often find people that like have him as tall as everyone else, and or like waxed. Like he'll lift his arm up and there's no armpit hair. I'm like,
because he does it freshly in the morning, but by the evening it's grown back.
I
so they
see.
don't show that.
Right before he goes into battle, he
Yeah.
does full body shave.
Yeah, full just
full
he
laser
just
hair
goes
removal.
in. That's one of the services in the mansion.
Well, there was
is
an issue where he had to go infiltrate this these militia group, and he actually gave himself a haircut, but he had to hurry up because by the time he got through, it started growing back.
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of.
Oh, so he has like a super growth
He does,
hair as well.
He would be a good
Super hair.
hair club for men would want his DNA. That's what that. See,
So number 3 for you.
Number 3 for me, I'm gonna go with classic Superman. And by classic, I mean he better have the red briefs on. Okay, if he doesn't have the red briefs on, it's not classic Superman.
Now, what about the shield? I mean, because there's
Oh,
been
like the
very
actual-
different. Yeah,
There's
Okay,
been
yeah, not quite that
variations. Okay.
classic.
Okay.
I like I like, no one that's listening can see, but I am wearing a Superman logo on my jacket, and the sort of, when you think of Superman, the logo you think of, that's the one
Like
that
the classic Christopher Reeve look.
Yes,
Yes.
Right.
yes, Christopher Reeve
Yeah.
Superman is Superman in the comics, as I picture him, brought into life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just perfection.
Unfortunately, though, the one thing the hard part about Superman having such a classic costume is it's so hard to update, because a lot of times, You know, the blue costume, which was totally off the wall, other side of the world from his regular costume, and that was kind of hard. A lot of fans don't like that because it was just, obviously it's completely different. It's supposed to be the same character, but it's completely different, which it wasn't the best costume ever, but it was very 90s. Or was that early 2000s?
It was better than the New 52 costume where he's in a pair of blue jeans and a tank top.
See,
I
don't
liked
know.
the
Like, yeah.
Action Comics New 52 look, where it was just a t-shirt and some jeans and like a pair of hiking boots.
It kind of pays homage to what he was. I mean, like he was kind of
He was a
like
farmer.
He was
yeah,
just a
it's
kid.
simple.
Yeah.
And so I think it had its place, but even like the new updated costume that he has without the briefs, it's just, I mean, it's not bad, but it's just not. There's not something. It's not the classic Superman, which is what I feel like is hard when you become such an iconic character to change massive things like that.
And the thing about the Superman look too, as far as the red briefs go, if you look at the costumes with and without the red briefs, there's something about your eye. There's a giant yellow arrow pointing right down to his crotch, and so it's like that's where your eyes go, are right there. And Ma Kent would have looked at that costume and go, I am not letting my son walk around with a giant arrow pointing right to his crotch. I'm going to put something to distract the eye a little bit, change around where your viewpoint is. And so that's why the red briefs are there. And I feel like, once Clark was like, these look so silly, and once he's designing his own costume, he takes them off. But classic Superman would have it because she would have known. She would have known, put the red briefs on, and no one's going to be looking at your business. Then they'll actually look at the shield.
See, but here's the thing is, Batman, which is going to be my fourth pick, but Batman has done the brief, no brief kind of thing, and it's worked well for him. And he still has the big giant symbol and the
the
bright
arrow's
belt.
not. But the arrow's not going to the
But he has
crotch.
a big giant yellow belt that
Well.
accentuates that area. So it's not. I feel like they can do it. I just don't know if I don't know if Superman's the character that can pull it off as far as like without changing more than just that. When you just change just that, then yes, the costume isn't going to work. But
I think when you look at, if you do sort of a side-by-side comparison of Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill Superman costumes, you'll see the way the
you got
costume
to
is
win Roth
shaped.
too, because his costume was a little bit different too.
yeah,
I don't count him as a
Oh,
Superman.
you don't? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. That wasn't a Superman movie. I don't know what that was. I mean, not that Man of Steel was.
That's
That's
a whole-
not what
that's
we're
a whole
talking
nother
about.
episode.
Well, no, I'm just talking about his costume.
But
Right.
if we're talking about, design wise, you look at them side by side, and it is really kind of weird. Like, yeah, your eye gets drawn to different parts of the body by default, and it's surprising, but the giant red briefs don't draw your eye as much as the lack of them does.
Well, they also.
I think the red belt helps when he has like a red belt. Like I'm looking right now at an issue of Superpowers that's got Supes, and he's got like a big red belt on, no briefs, and it works. That works. But when he's got nothing, when he's just blue all the way down, that's where your eyes go, and I just don't want. It's not where I want my eyes to go. I want my eyes to stay on his beautiful face and his little S curl.
that is
Which
a great hairstyle.
He has a fantastic hairstyle, and I love that that's part of his thing, is that he's
That's
got the
the
little
curl.
curl that he doesn't have when he's Clark. And that's part of it, is he's got this gelled, slick, cute hairstyle. He's got this whole persona that changes, and that's why you don't recognize him as Superman.
And the glasses, which
And
are
the
always
glasses.
the fashion accessory that you should have when you're trying to have a secret identity.
And can
At
you
all times.
imagine Clark Kent wearing this big flashy costume? No. And so when you see this guy in, a blue, gymnast suit with red briefs over it, you don't think, oh, hey, look, it's Clark Kent. Because you can't even imagine him doing that.
At all. Not even remotely. I mean, every time I read a Superman comic, it's shocking.
It's a surprise.
You didn't
every
realize
time.
it was Clark Kent, did
Every
you?
time.
Every time.
Surprises
I forgot.
you.
It's
Every
Clark
page
Kent.
I turn, it is a new surprise for me.
So wearing the belt, does that just sort of put a block? You just you're going down and boom, stops
It's
you?
it's like
It
color
does.
blocking.
I mean,
it's
it
just
is-
a scheme.
You have to break up the
Breaks it
body.
up.
And obviously I don't know as much about menswear as I do about women's wear. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that it is important. Belts can do a lot of different things. I mean, obviously, one of the things they do for a woman's body, if you wear it at your natural waist, is it can kind of give the illusion that the waist is smaller than it is. because you've got the different color there.
But if you wear it too low, then it gives you the illusion that they are wider.
Right.
And if you wear it really high, you can get the illusions of just more of a boxy, different silhouette.
Right. So I mean, the belt can make a big difference in what you're looking at.
And
in general.
you mentioned Batman as your next pick. Which costume? I mean, when you think of Batman, what's the classic Batman costume you think of?
Yes.
Exactly. Like I feel like Batman's one of the few characters that I actually don't really have a least favorite costume.
Because in the
of him.
70s, 80s,
A
he
lot
had
of his,
the
like,
light blue and gray.
Right.
Blue and
kinda
gray.
had
Then he
the-
went a
the
little darker, and black,
and-
and
Well, then he went all black,
Right,
and then now
right.
he's kind of got the more bluish gray kind of look again, and then
Yeah,
his,
it's like a light
60s
gray,
stuff,
yeah.
and then I feel like a lot of his stuff is. Most of his things that have changed, including the symbol, his bat symbol, has always been kind of interesting and neat, but it's subtle enough that it's not kind of off-putting.
well, one time it was surrounded in yellow, and now it maybe just sometimes
got
it's
a yellow
black, sometimes there's a
outline.
outline on
Yeah.
it.
The only thing that I really did not like about Batman is the fact that his other cheap kind of cheesy armor, or like his scuba gear. Although in the recent, maybe last year before, they did some like hazmat Batman where he was the Mesovirus.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody read
Yeah.
that one? Where
Yeah.
it was like he had like the mask on, he had like the hazmat Batman. I felt like that was a kind of like a wink and a
kinda
nod to kind of.
I kinda wanted an action
I
figure
think,
of that.
I think all those stupid things like that, though, are the reason why you can change his costume constantly.
Mhm.
Because people are used to that.
It is true. It is probably a gimmicky thing, especially over the years. I feel
Like on the animated series, how many costumes did he have on the animated series?
Like I feel like someone should Google that. How many armor changes does he have? Like it's
Yeah.
got to
But
be.
there again, though, that animated series costume
that was a really good.
That
one.
was, yes.
Yeah.
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 That,
But I still feel like the classic blue and gray is
Yeah.
really a great one. Jim Lee, when he did the All Star,
Mhm.
I really liked that when he did the All Star reboot.
When he did the Hush
All-
storyline,
All-
too.
Yeah,
That was a classic.
yeah. So I feel like Batman is one of those ones that he's had several changes, and they've all been fairly decent and fairly iconic. Most of them, like most people, you can talk to anybody and be like, well, Batman's costume when he was blue and gray. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When Batman's costume when he was black and yellow. Oh yeah. And so I feel like he's one of the ones. That's one of the reasons that I really thought he had a really good costume.
Plus, Batman.
He's Batman.
It's Batman.
Be yourself unless you can be Batman.
Yep.
Then be Batman. So.
For my number 4, I'm gonna go with there's very few male comic book characters that actually sort of take any kind of risks with their costumes. For the most part, there's a pretty stock thing you think of when you think of male superhero costume. And I don't know, maybe you guys already know where I'm going with this, but I'm gonna say Clint Barton. All right. Man has taken some risks. All right. He started out. And yeah, he's got his like purple and magenta thing, and it's got like a loincloth over the over tights. I mean, he was a circus act, so I mean, it makes sense for him to have this really quite outrageous costume. He had one for a while that was like a mini dress with a belt.
Yeah.
That one, I mean, and it was bright pink. He had a bright pink mini dress on. I mean,
See, and I think a lot of that was coloring. A lot of times, I feel like he was supposed to stay more in the magenta, purplish range.
well, yeah,
And
but
a lot of times,
still,
the book would always come out like a pink and blue kind of color.
and part of it too. Another thing that's sort of interesting about it is because he is, even if he is pink, purple kind of colors, those are not, you normally associate superheroes with primary colors, right? The secondary colors are normally for villains, right? And so even while he was, the head of
Although
an
he was a
Avengers
villain
team, he
at
was
one-
originally a
yeah.
villain, but even when he became the head of, the West Coast Avengers, he still had his secondary color scheme to kind of let you know that he's not all good. He's still a rogue or just kind of a screw up. Whatever it is that's about him, you knew that there was something a little different about him. And
he's a fan favorite too. So
Yeah.
for that reason, yeah.
And I also, that being said, I'm also quite fond of his modern costume that's just sort of the black with the purple, chevron. I think that it's
Arrowhead looking thing.
yeah, I think that it's a really good look. I think it looks great on him, and I think that it's sort of simple and classic. You look at it and you feel like he's been wearing it way longer than he has. You know, he's only been wearing it, I mean, less than 10 years, I think, now. But, you know, you look at that and you think, yeah, why hasn't that always been his costume? It's
Well,
nice and clean.
He was definitely one of the ones that I kind of went back and forth.
And I
I
think
kind of made a list of him.
in the MCU Hawkeye, I think they did a really good job kind of portraying that kind of costume and made it more kind of a practical kind of
yeah.
deal. And I thought they did good.
And he's had, I guess we've seen him in a few different looks. We've only seen him as Hawkeye really in 2 costumes. And so the first one was the sleeveless look with the sort of, it was like a dark magenta detailing on it. And that one was nice. And then the one that he had in Age of Ultron, he had like the one long sleeve and kind of a long, almost sort of like I don't even know quite how to describe it. Like a sort of the way that a man from India wears, you know, that style,
The kind
that
of-
cut
the
of shirt.
Poofy kind of shirt.
Well, no, just
it
a
was
longer,
the
sort
like
of
a longer
knee-length.
jacket.
Right,
Yeah.
okay,
yeah, like a
Yeah,
Sur-
it was
like a
longer,
sur-
but
a
it was
surcoat.
longer and fitted.
Yes, surcoat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it looked, I thought that one looked quite nice, and it was also in the spirit of him doing something that's a little outside of the norm. You don't normally see a lot of men wearing one-sleeved clothing. You know, he takes some risks, and I really appreciate that.
Well, it really worked with what his motif is, which is like that archer, you know, having
Yes.
that one arm
It's
free.
practicality.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
You know, I wonder how many times though, you know, he's shot and maybe the arrow kind of scraped him. You know, that one sleeve kind of stops and protects his hand or
There you
arm.
go.
maybe.
There's
Yeah,
something.
and-
they don't-
There you can Google that.
Yeah,
Now you
yeah.
should see how
Yeah.
many times he's nicked himself. Google how many times Hawkeye has.
Yeah,
nicked
we'll let
himself with
the
different
listeners Google
Yeah.
that and let us
Let us know.
know about that one.
All right, so
Archers do wear a
Yeah.
the glove
Arm,
with the,
yeah.
with the,
Yeah, they
Right.
usually
glove
have,
on the
they'll
finger.
usually have a bare arm because you don't want to have stuff get stuck on your clothing.
Well, and then also catch with the end of the arrow and stuff. So my last one that I had was I kind of went back and forth on 2 different ones. I kind of went back and forth. Doctor Strange was kind of my one that I kept coming back to, but the one I think I'm going to go with as far as another great, almost primary colors, but not quite, which is Iron Fist. I always thought Iron Fist has been really kind of interesting throughout the years. You know, from his classic little slippers until nowadays he's got more of the I don't know, like it's like a skin tight cloth, but the mask is kind of different, and he's gone through some very subtle changes that I really liked. I always like, you can always tell about his like eye makeup or the eye makeup on the
Yeah.
mask. You know, it's very iconic. The yellow and green has always been around, and so I've always liked his costume. I always thought it was something simple, but again, very much like a martial artist, very practical, something that moved and kind of fit into the more ninja motif or the kung fu expert motif.
I
So
liked the white one.
the white one was really
The
good.
white and the
yeah.
white and the gold.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. I'm more a fan of the classic, like I said, the green yellow, the
Green
classic
yellow
version of it.
slippers.
Yeah.
I like them both. I like
Yeah.
how the green and the yellow complemented each other, and they were bright. You know,
With
really.
the disco lapel as well.
Yeah.
No, what's funny though is
Absolutely,
Yes, at all times.
that ties in together. Yeah.
Always.
what's
have a
funny is
disco
all the
lapel.
characters we kind of mentioned are bright, and it's like, you know, I kind of think,
Right.
well, because they have to be bright, so the
Well,
the
But a
people
lot
attack
of
them, you know, hit
a
the
lot of
bright
those
target.
always had
you know.
some
Yeah.
kind of alternative, because even with him, you know, he did have the bright, but in I want to say the early 2000s, he did the kind of where you went to the other place and was fighting all the people, doing all the tournaments, and he had like a more of a darker. It was almost like a
Like
I don't
the
know, like a
Immortal
forest
Iron
green,
Fist?
yeah. It
Yeah,
was like
Right.
he,
more
did
of
have
Yeah.
a, he had a
Yeah.
deeper.
like a forest green kind of color, and so it was more muted, and the yellow was even some kind of grungy.
I know it was actually
kind of like
sometimes he
mustard.
went just pantsless. I mean, he had pants on but shirtless. Sorry, shirtless.
I probably would have read
Whoa.
it if it was pantsless.
Sorry about that. Freudian slip there. He would go shirtless with the slippers and the pants.
Yes.
And no
He
mask,
has
yes.
occasionally been shirtless with
Wow.
the tattoo.
Pantsless, I need to go back.
Well, we know what Dad's been thinking
Yeah,
about.
I might have been picking up some fan
Wow.
comments there.
All right, so your final pick.
Okay, so
For
for
men?
my final pick, I mean, he's not a classic character, hasn't been around that long, but he's had some really good designs recently, is Billy Kaplan from the Young Avengers, and he was Wiccan, and then he was sort of, they were trying to rebrand him a little bit recently, but that's sort of what he goes by for the most part. I really was not a fan of his debut look when he was Asgardian. He had just this like a raggedy red cape, and then he had like a Naruto headband thing on. It was not
with the
cute.
big wing.
Yeah, and he stuck with that for way too long. But Jamie McKelvey did a fantastic redesign for him with just some, like, he looked like he was wearing galaxies on his costume. It looked beautiful, and it looked great when lots of people, different people drew it. And then recently he was in the Sorcerer Supreme's book, and he had this red and black striped cape that he was wearing, and it was just really striking, really beautiful, and so I would say he's had recently just 2 really stellar costumes. And I guess I mean that kind of pun-like as well, because there were literal stars on on one of them. But it's hard for me in particular. I think that, like with men's fashion, men's superhero costumes, they don't tend to be as dramatic of changes, and there's not a lot of variety in between different characters. Within a character there's not usually a huge range, and between characters there's not a huge range, and so
Well, that's pretty much men in general.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
In men's costumes, not costumes, in men's clothing as well, in sort of the real world, that's also the case. There's not a huge difference, but there are differences that change slowly, but you can still tell. Like when you look at men from the 70s, a man in a leisure suit, you're gonna be like, oh man, are you going to a costume party right now? Like, what's your deal?
Like Arcade still wears that same leisure suit, I think.
I like the
White
one-piece suit
one.
of the 70s.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that neither one of you mentioned Luke Cage's original costume. Man, that was fantastic.
Well, you know what? I don't disagree with this. Like
Well,
with
Disco
the chain,
Pimp.
the chain around his waist, and the big giant bumper for
Tiara,
a headband.
yeah.
and-
We haven't got to the 5 worst yet.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, other than
No, no.
That would be a
Nomad,
different show.
No,
other than
no.
Nomad, you might have noticed that none of my favorite costumes came from the 70s. That one was
And no one
a bit
mentioned
of a-
Dazzler either. That's a
Oh,
great
well,
costume.
Dazzler's not a
Dazzler's
guy.
man,
Well, that's true. That's true. That's true.
so-
That's true. I forget we're just doing the men right now.
Yes.
Yes.
Or I have serious issues. If Dazzler's a guy.
Yeah, I'm not-
Fashion
I don't think that. I mean, there was an issue where Dazzler encountered a Dazzler drag queen,
That's true.
but I don't think that the drag queen was a
Took
superhero.
over. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think that was
I don't
like-
think he took her
I don't
place.
think he was the new Dazzler
I'm
at any
aware.
Are you
point.
sure? That could be the new series getting ready to
I
come
have
out.
to
You
say
know?
though, like,
Yeah.
as far as Wiccan's costume, I have never liked any of his incarnations. I feel like
Did you
though.
even like the Jamie McKelvey costume?
No, I love his
Uh-oh.
art. I think he can make any costume look good.
Well, yeah, that
He's
helps.
doing what's the new one?
The Wicked and the Divine.
Yes, the Wicked and the Divine. Like all their stuff, and I mean, like he is just talented.
He's a genius. Okay,
Yes,
if you're listening to
he-
this, Jamie McKelvey, you're a genius, and I love you.
Yes, he.
We'll specifically tag him for this issue or
I'm
episode.
serious.
Yeah.
Like his colors or not his colors is his line work is just impeccable.
Yeah.
It's just.
He is one of those that
Everybody looks like if you see a character, their face shape looks the same in every single frame, whether it's small or wherever they're at. It looks like they have literally taken an actor and put them somewhere else because you know who they are. The main character in Wicked and Divine, Persephone, I
Yeah.
think. He's done so many different hairstyles with her recently, and every single time though it looks like the same character with different hair. And a lot of artists will they'll do different hair, but then all of a sudden like their face doesn't look quite right, and so you got to kind of figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes a lot of artists their faces all look the same.
Okay.
Well, all right. I've learned a lot.
That's a good way to stop it.
I usually don't.
We'll pick this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I usually don't pick my comics apart with the costumes, so I've learned a lot.
You're gonna start now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be reading them, and I'll be. Well, it's got a crop top. I don't know. I like this.
This is not in. This is in.
So, if any comments about this? What's your favorite costume? Your favorite guy superhero costume, favorite girl superhero costume is, least favorite. We'll cover that on the next episode.
And we're gonna
Is
thank
Alan
our-
insane with his headband?
Yes.
choices?
Does Alan have a headband fetish? Maybe.
Also, I want to thank Raquel and Alan for coming
Yeah.
in and talking about fashion for us. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
because we never would have made this an hour and a half.
We couldn't have done this
couldn't
by
have.
ourselves. No.
We have CollectorCon coming up next week,
Yes.
and so it's going to be at the Trade Wind. If you're in the Tulsa, it's the Trade Winds Hotel over on I-44 in Harvard. It's a 2-day show. Come out, see us.
Several guests are going to be there.
Yes,
Sam De La Rosa?
Steve Irwin, Sam De La Rosa, Ashley Whittier, Ash Mazzeco will be there.
And
We'll be there at probably
Okay.
different times. So